The Pound Gap massacres, which happened on May 14th, 1892, is one of the worst crimes that has ever happened in my area. And I'm going to read you guys the story of Ira Mullins and Red Fox, also known as Doc Taylor. Ira Mullins was a merchant and one of many moonshiners that made a living selling illegal whiskey in the mountains of eastern Kentucky and western Virginia. Marshall Benton Taylor learned to be a doctor or a herbologist from his uncle, and although never formally educated, he was known as Doc Taylor and eventually had the nickname the Red Fox. And he was a character in a fictional account of the Hatfields and McCoys by John Fox Jr. After the Civil War, he returned to practice medicine and become a spiritual leader in the community. In 1876, Taylor was accused of killing an outlaw, Robert Moore, at his home in front of his wife. Taylor was charged but not convicted of the murder due to the lack of evidence. After that incident, Doc Taylor reportedly walked around carrying 2 pistols and a Winchester rifle. He was later appointed as deputy by the Marshal of Wise County, Virginia, and participated in a posse that captured a wagon of illegal whiskey being driven through the town of Wise Courthouse and belonging to Ira Mullins. Many shots were fired, the wagon driver killed, and many wounded. Ira Mullins was one of the moonshiners. There is conflicting reports that Ira was wounded at this time or during a later altercation with revenue agents, which left him paralyzed. Ira Mullins had several of his family members on this trip, including his wife, Luann, their 14-year-old son, John, Ira's sister's husband, Wilson Mullins. They also had a handyman, John Chappell, and another guy named Greenberry Harris. And they set out from Wilson's home in Kentucky for Pound, Virginia. The ambush was set up at Pound Gap behind large boulders with additional branches added for concealment, and it's now called Killing Rock. When the shooting commenced from the right side and above the road, Wilson was riding beside the wagon. A thunderous roar of gunfire exploded from behind the rocks. In a matter of seconds, bullets penetrated the horses, the wagons, and its passengers. The air was filled with black powder smoke from the guns. The ground became covered with blood. Even the team of horses pulling the wagon were struck by the gunfire and fell to the ground dead. All were killed, including some horses, with the exception of Ira's son, John Mullins, and Wilson's wife, Jane. Although the Mullins money was taken, the killings were for revenge. Ira was reportedly mutilated by at least 8 shots from Doc Taylor's rifle and the guns of the outlaws Fleming brothers. His wife also received numerous wounds. The killers escaped to the rugged mountains, and eventually Doc Taylor hid out at his son's house in Norton, Virginia. His son convinced him to escape to Florida by train, and Taylor boarded an empty boxcar en route to Bluefield, West Virginia, where he hoped to hop another freight. Unfortunately, the Baldwin Detective Agency somehow got word of his location and arrested and returned him to Wise County, Virginia to stand trial. So prosecutors tried to focus on Doc Taylor's Winchester rifle. It had been known that his rifle used rimfire cartridges. Rimfire shells had been found at the murder scene, but when the jury examined the gun, they found it to be centerfire. However, upon close scrutiny, they saw that the plunger had been cleverly changed to strike the center of the cartridge instead of the rim. Then they decided this clever man had tampered with the firing pin. Doc Marshall Benton Taylor, also known as the Red Fox, was hung on October 27, 1893.